You're listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, the show that invites you into the lives of people who make up the Ultra family. Here's your host for these conversations, Larry Ryan.
Thanks, MJ. Today on the show, I'm introducing our second guest in the Beyond 515 series. This man crossed the Sahara Desert, a staggering 7,500 kilometers. So he basically crushed a 515 day three every day for 111 consecutive days. Today's guest is an explorer and ultramarathoner. He first gained international recognition after running the entire length of the Sahara Desert, more than 7,500 kilometers, in just over 100 days. Since then, he's completed expeditions across some of the most extreme environments on Earth, including speed record journeys to the South Pole, winter crossings of Siberia's Lake Baikal, solo runs through the Atacama Desert, and multiple Arctic expeditions pulling sleds across sea ice. If you're a longtime listener to the podcast, then you would have heard Ferg Hawk talk about that. And if that wasn't enough, he's an author of Running for My Life and Running to Extremes, as well as the co-founder of the educational initiative Impossible to Possible, which connects students around the world to his real-time expeditions. Joining me today from his home in Chelsea, Quebec, welcome to the podcast, Ray Zahab.
Thank you so much, Larry. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Traditionally, this podcast has always been for the 515 triathlon community, but this season we're stretching it out to ultra as a larger community, and you were definitely one of the guests I wanted to get in when we started to go with that stream as well. So thank you for coming and sharing some of these stories with us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. And you answered my first question. Why 515? Like, what's the 515? And then once you said it, I remember because I've listened to the podcast in the past, but it's been a long time. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's great. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a crazy distance for like a triathlon. Like I can't wrap my head around that, like, especially, okay, the bike, maybe I think I can kind of get it, like the run. Well, all right, but the swim.
Yeah, I mean, 10 kilometer swim.
10 kilometers of swimming.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Anyhow, whatever, you guys are amazing.
Yeah. Well, you know a couple of these people. Like I said, you've met Ferg Hawk and also Jen Sager. She was
Ferg and Jen are very good friends of mine. Yes. Yeah. So
you're part of the family.
Yeah.
Well, just to get us placed a little bit for the people around the world, you're in a suburb of Canada's capital, of Ottawa, right?
So I know I live in Chelsea, Quebec, Canada. Yeah. So I'm across the Ottawa River from Ottawa. You can see Ottawa from some of our hills up here in King Mountain. Yeah. You can see across to Ottawa quite easily. But I live in a place it's like Mecca for Nordic skiing. So at this time of year, the trails here are phenomenal if that's your jam. So, and then of course summer, it's trail running and mountain biking and flat water, canoe kayak. There's some white water. There's a little bit of everything here. It really is a really cool outdoor spot. And I get out west quite a bit too. And so I was just in Vancouver, like literally a week ago at the Vancouver International Mountain Film Festival, giving a presentation, and so I have friends there, and so I'm there a lot. But it's the other end of the outdoor world, in Canada. If you will, it's the other coast. Well, right. We're not really a coast, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. You're on the far side. You're over there where the new Ironman Canada is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. They had it last year for the first time, I think. Right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Well, I want to give the listener a little bit of background before we get into some of these epic adventures of yours. I don't think a lot of young children aspire to be lifelong endurance athletes, at least not prior to your influence. What was your life like before doing these things? What kind of activities, sports were you into? And what was the turning point that kind of pulled you toward ultra?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's a bit of a long and winding story. I started doing this kind of stuff I'm doing, like getting into the outdoors and doing the things we love to do. I started doing all this around the age of 30. Prior to that, I mean, I really wasn't an athlete of any kind. I was in fact a pack-a-day smoker until I was 30, until I changed my life. And so, I grew up in my early years. I grew up, my brother and I have a younger brother. He's the one that got me into doing all this stuff. He's done Ironman triathlon. He's an avid climber, runner, mountain biker, paddler, swimmer, does all the stuff. And so he got me into, doing the things I do now. But I digress. So we grew up on a farm, and, we grew up outside essentially. I mean, this is, the old days, right? Because I'm not a young man. So, there's no social media. There's no, you're not flicking through 100 channels. We had CBC, CTV, and sometimes Global if the things on the TV were catching the signal. So, I mean, you weren't sitting around, like there's nothing to do. And so your friends were across the 25-acre hayfield, and if you wanted to see them, you had to cross the hayfield and then go hang out. So, inadvertently and organically, we grew up running around as youngsters. And then, as I got older and, into school and college, and then just, in the 20s, you start passing you by and you're partying all the time. And I just wasn't living in a way that for me was sustainable or fulfilling in any way. I mean, I had friends all around me, my brother included, my younger brother included, who had sort of, were defining who they were and finding things they loved to do and were passionate about stuff. And lo and behold, I was just doing the same things I was doing at 16, 18, 20, 22. I mean, nothing was really changing. And so I couldn't really find the exit. And it was my brother who convinced me to go out randomly mountain biking with him one day. I mean, I obviously could not ride the bike up a hill because I was, pack-a-day smoker, as I'd mentioned. But in being so inspired by this guy, my brother, I found within him a passion and a love for the stuff he was doing, the rock climbing and ice climbing, especially. He just loved that stuff. And so I was like, wow, and he's so fit and he just loves this stuff. Maybe if I did the things he does, my life would be different. And that's literally how it started. So you and I wouldn't even be having this conversation today if it wasn't for my brother, who would become my greatest inspiration, is what I tell people. It's the truth. And, when I started doing those things and discovering those things, and then, I wanted to get fitter and healthier and stronger. And of course, everything else had to be left behind, right? The partying for the most part, the smoking 100% had to be left. All these things had to go into the rearview mirror in order to be able to do the things that I was becoming passionate about. And to jump to the question next that I bet you're going to ask, like when, the starting of the running, I didn't really start running until a few years after I quit smoking. I became a passionate mountain biker. Loved riding and racing my mountain bike. And I was racing my bike at one point. I was doing races internationally and loving it. And it became something that I was good at. I really loved it. And I was discovering inside me a person who for 30 years I'd never known, right? But here's this person who all of a sudden, when you start putting broccoli instead of Jack Daniels into your body, and you're not smoking a pack of cigarettes today, instead you're riding your bike, all of a sudden I found I had the same engine for endurance that my brother has. So, one thing led to another. I wasn't into trail running at all, or running of any kind. I ran a handful of times in preparation for adventure races, which was another thing I became passionate about. And then I read an article about ultramarathons and was mesmerized by the fact that these people could go out and do these long, arduous runs, and thought that it's something my brother might like, because he was an avid marathon runner. And I ended up being the one that enters this ultra marathon in the Yukon, and I end up winning it. And this was 2004, winter 2004. And I thought, well, maybe this is what I should be doing with the rest of my life. And to summarize that journey from 2004 to 2006, when we started the Running the Sahara expedition, which was my first expedition. I've done 45 expeditions over the years now. that few years I did ultra marathons literally all over the world because I didn't know how I did what I did in the Yukon. And it made sense to me that if I went and did other ultra marathons, maybe I could figure out how I could push my body that way or feel so incredible because I knew it wasn't something unique to me, that in every human being is this capacity to do something extraordinary in our lives or feel incredible or overcome mental, physical, and emotional barriers. And so I just wanted to know how to do that in everyday life, not just in ultra marathons. And so I did a bunch of ultra marathons, met the guys that I would run across the Sahara with. And, you know, I'm sure you'll ask questions about that.
Yeah. And so it takes you into a place that, first of all, you didn't realize existed, didn't know that you could get to. But when you start doing it in those first couple of ultra marathons and stuff, what is it that clicked for you that said, yes, this is what I should be doing?
Well, the first ultra marathon was the first thing I'd ever won. Like, I mean, I couldn't believe I was living like imposter syndrome for days after that Yukon Arctic Ultra because I thought I must have took a wrong turn or, you know, there's no way I'm not the guy that should be winning something like that. And then what I realized is like, well, wait a second. I mean, you know, so in pursuit of trying to figure out how I was able to do what I did, I started doing these other ultra marathons. Around, you know, I did Marathon des Sables a few times. I did, you know, the Libyan Challenge, a race in Libya in the desert. I did, you know, a bunch of different ones. And it was in every, as time went on over those few years, I was traveling a lot and I was making it happen. I had no money. I was spending every penny that I made on doing these races. And it was
That
crazy
sounds
time.
familiar.
I mean, it was just crazy times. But I was at a point in my life where I had no expectations with myself, right? Like I'm now mid 30s and it's like I'm starting over completely from scratch. I'm starting my life over. And I was happy with nothing but experiences. You know,
Right.
I didn't have anything. I in those early days, this is before I met my wife, you know, I wanted to have kids. I've always loved kids. I always wanted to be a dad, and I knew my brother would be a dad at some point. So I thought, well, maybe I could be the crazy uncle. I mean, I had other priorities in my life that I wanted, but at the time, in the moment of some of these races, when I was out there experiencing these races, um, and during that process, meeting my wife, and then you know what you know, the running was teaching me about the world and teaching me about myself. It
Mhm.
was running would become my greatest teacher. I've said that in a million presentations I've given before.
Right.
And then this journey that I was on to discover things about myself led to all these other things, you know, that I would
Mhm.
learn about because I was entering ultra marathons around the world. And in that period of time and before running across the Sahara, I met my wife, Kathy, who's a runner,
Mm.
and you know, then met Charlie and Kevin, and you know, off we go across the Sahara Desert to run
Yeah.
7,500 k. So when we got on the start line, like you know, in the sand in Senegal to start that expedition, which you know was 111 days, 7,500 kilometers, give or take.
Yeah.
Um, that was going to be more time than I'd spent on my feet my entire life. It was some wacky stat I figured out in my brain at that point. And I thought, geez, you know, like I literally thought in my mind when we were standing on the west coast of Africa that I haven't got a hope of finishing this thing. Like,
Yeah.
and any of the times that I've applied that idea where, well, you know, this is going to go one way or the other, and you know, like it's just I'll do the best I can, but you know, and I remove that stigma of expectation, uh, things go well. You know, that you get into a rhythm.
Yeah.
And I can tell you specific times throughout my career, you know, on very risky expeditions like the one Kevin Vallely, another, you know, BCite, and myself did across Ellesmere Island last winter was one
Mm.
of the most difficult projects I've ever done. And I wrote a long post about our mindset and aging and doing that expedition. And
Right.
because we had removed that expectation from ourselves and we're just in the moment completely in it, It went unbelievably well, given the conditions we were in. I mean, anyhow, I know I'm going all over the map here, but that's a whole other thing you can ask me about.
Well,
But
I think that's definitely kind of the arc that we want to follow to. But stepping off from this first adventure with the Sahara, you said you know you didn't have a lot of expectation. Were there things there that now looking back that you were blissfully, hopefully, not prepared for or aware of? Like, were there things that you just didn't know that you didn't know, and how did that turn out for you?
Well, I mean, when I went to the Yukon Arctic Ultra, the first race that I'd done, I never ran a 5K race or a 10K race or any kind of race. That was my very first running race, period, and it was 100 miles. So I had, by that point, had a habit of just throwing myself at things and seeing, not overthinking it and just like going for it kind of thing, right? Without any plan or structure. With running the Sahara, we were taking it very seriously, the three of us. And, we trained and prepared, and we did one of these stage races together. So I think the process of preparation and the size and scope of the project and the fact it was going to be this big fancy documentary film and everything else, that instilled in me, we did really prepare for this thing. I mean, it's the first time I've really, 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 really prepared, and so things are different. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I started running, literally, like seriously running, it's 3.5 years ago before the start, right? And 7 years ago, I'm smoking a pack a day of cigarettes, so the doubting it does drop in where you're like, well, what business do I have to be here with these two great runners? But, we were a team and great buddies. And so we would support one another through the entire expedition anyhow,
Yeah. And were you prepared for the suffering that would be involved in running for 111 days?
Well, there's something I learned in a race in Niger that I did called the Trans 333. It was a 333 kilometer nonstop running race I did previous to the Sahara expedition. And in that race, I remember like the middle of it, it took me 60 hours to do the race. It was through sand dunes and everything. And I was completely beat up. It was 1 billion degrees. I was alone out there in full navigation and not a marked course you had to navigate. And I was in the middle of the night and I was walking through these dunes, and I remember kind of feeling sorry for myself, saying, oh, wow, I'm suffering like crazy out here. And what I realized in that moment, looking up at how incredible the stars were, it's like you could reach in and pull them out of the sky. It was so thick with stars. What I realized was that I chose to be there. I'm the one that, filled out the entry form, right? I'm the one that chose to. So is it really suffering, or is it something that you've chosen? So I find suffering to be like more of a difficult word, because there are other things you'll go through in life where you truly are suffering, right? And so we, as odd and weird as it sounds, like we like it. You do 515 kilometers of Ironman because you like it, and then okay, you're gonna get blisters maybe and saddle sores and whatever else. A shark eats you in the water, but you are compelled to do it. And at the price of admission is these things that make it difficult, but the difficulties are something that you've accepted because it's part of the price of play.
Right.
And so for that reason, it's not so bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In 2023, I was training for an expedition and I was chronically tired all the time and, just unable to get myself into the shape that I normally am able to get myself into. And my wife, Kathy said, listen, you got to go get checked out at the doctor and all this. So eventually I go to the doctor. We all don't like going to the doctor, but I go to the doctor, get blood work done. And they find out I've got this super rare form of a blood cancer. So I was going to have to do 6 months of chemotherapy. I was going to have to do, monoclonal therapy. It was going to be difficult. And so, you're up against it. So this is not something you choose. I didn't choose that. And it was going to be incredibly challenging, but for different reasons. And there was going to be some suffering, which was more suffering because I was going to be sick from the chemo. I was going to be bloated all the time, feeling like crap, and doing it every 25 days. And even in that moment, I thought back to the expeditions I've done and the projects I've done. And I said to myself, you know what? Like, I'm going to tackle this thing head on in the same way that we learn from these. And so every month I
And
would go off
that's
and
where
do
the
something
value
crazy.
comes in.
Yeah, I would go off and do something crazy. Like I would get the blessing of my oncologist, and I would, I'd recover from the chemo stuff in me that they would put in,
Right.
and then I would go and do something. And I think that, because of that perspective, long answer, I know it's a really long answer, but because of that perspective that, we choose to do these things that are very difficult. When this thing came along that I didn't choose,
Yeah.
I was better prepared to deal with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I still don't look back at that whole 6-month experience and say, wow, how miserable I was. But these difficult things that we go through, and I remind people of this is just me in my experience. It's relative to us as individuals, the things we go through. So what you go through or I go through, the way we may feel it is completely different. And not one answer is the right one, So it's like figuring out for you what works best in dealing with all this stuff, Anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah. And for you, I guess you were lucky to have found this endurance sport stuff, because maybe if you were still that pack-a-day smoker and partying, your body wouldn't have been able to work to fight this off, and your mind wouldn't have maybe been prepared to do it either.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, for sure. I mean, that's a very real possibility. I guess I'll never know. I do know that there are skills that I took, like individual skills that I took from expedition that I applied to my treatments and recovery and all that,
Yeah.
So like the body's resilience, like you've learned that, like, and these things you do, you're out there for so long and it seems impossible. Like we were talking offline before we came out, I just can't imagine some of it, any of it actually. And yet you do it, and you do it more than once. You do it twice, 3 times. I don't know how many times, but you've done this many times. So it's because you've gained skills and you apply those individual skills. Anyhow.
Yeah. So when you're talking to young people and students or older people, and you're giving your talks, what's one of the things that you say that expedition life has taught you? What are some of the real lessons?
Well, I mean, expeditions have taught me to never underestimate myself. I mean, that's a big one. They've taught me that, if you want to achieve something, there's a process. There's always a process. And I mean, okay, occasionally someone wins the lottery and that's it, right? But for most things in life, there's a process. And if you want to achieve something great, you have to, for example, you want to run your first 5K race. Well, you've got to lace up the shoes. You got to start your training program. You do a walk run. Let's say you've never done something like this before. You do the walk run program. Then you get into the running. And then eventually you get to the race and you do the race. But it takes preparation, right? In most cases, I have learned that the more I prepare, the better I apply the lessons from the previous expedition, the greater the chances of success, all things considered equal. I mean, there's environmental stuff that you can't control. I'm talking about the things you can control. You got a better chance of success, right? So that's the greatest adventure. Adventure mimics life in so many ways, and that's one of the main ways.
Yeah. So when you're planning these out now, you come into it with a real, I'm going to take my lessons from before. I'm going to plan very carefully. What about when you're planning the people you're doing it with? How do you know that you can trust the people that you're going out with to be prepared as well, and to like, I'm sure at times you get into some dangerous situations and you need to trust them in these extreme environments. Is there something that goes into that?
Well, so, over the last 20 years, I've done 40 close to 45. Let's just say 45 expeditions and major adventures, right? Half of them have been solo projects, and the other half have been with people, friends, teammates, like family, people that I've met over the years that I trust. We work well together. There's a lot of criteria. Like, for example, the expedition last winter that I completed, skiing from Eureka to Grease Fjord overland on Ellesmere Island, was 28 days. And we started like right now, like winter on the expedition. My teammate was Kevin Vallely, who I mentioned before. And the two of us have done projects together over the years. Went to the South Pole together. We've crossed Lake Baikal in Siberia together, among other projects. And we bring our skill sets together to do something like this big Ellesmere expedition. And we know right away each other's personalities. We know each other so well through the expeditions that we've done that we don't even necessarily need to speak. We can almost figure out what the other person is thinking. And there's a comfort level and a trust level. You got your life in one person's hand, the person their life in your hands. And through that relationship, there is this sense that you've become one person, right? So you're two people, you become one person. Of course, you're going to have minor disagreements, whatever. It's not a thing. Right. But imagine being in a tent at minus 50 for 28 days, and the tent is small. You both stink to high heaven because you've been out there for 28 days and busting your asses. And nothing is easy because everything is so cold. Touching anything, so the slightest tasks require you working together. That little area, that tent that you're in, you got to really like the person that you're with, or you're going to kill each other, And so there are people that you have synergy with, and Kevin is one of them. And that's why we were able to achieve that expedition. But I've done major projects with Jen Zager, Stefano Gregoretti, my friend from Italy, who I just finished this unsupported west to east, not unsupported, self-contained. I say the difference because we had water support, water drops out there. But he's from Italy, doesn't speak very much English, but we've been doing projects together. We crossed the Namib Desert, 1,850 kilometers. We did that together. We crossed Kamchatka in Eastern Russia together. We've done all kinds of crazy projects together. But again, we're able to collaborate, work together really well, balance each other really well, laugh together, work hard together, support one another, and read each other's minds, right? And that's what it takes with a really great teammate.
Yeah. Well, like you said, in these conditions where you're tight together, you're going to have your physical, mental, emotional fatigue happening that sets in during these expeditions. Have you ever been on one where you've had to manage some conflict within these survival settings? Like maybe you're on a bigger group or something?
No. And you know what? I mean, we haven't talked about it yet, but so I do expeditions professionally. That's what I do. Like, I'm an explorer. That's my job. And then I have my foundation, Impossible to Possible, where we take young people, 16 to 21 years of age, on expeditions around the world. Those expeditions are 100% free of charge. Nobody gets charged, and we're all volunteers in the organization. And then I have a guiding company called Capic One, where I take groups of adults, people like you and I and others, and we spend a week or week and a half on an expedition somewhere in the world. And those expeditions, of course, people are paying. It's like, we're guiding, and then a percentage of the proceeds go back to support the youth expeditions and yada, yada, yada. On any of these, the answer is no, because, for example, with a Capic One expedition, people will reach out. We don't advertise a ton, and people reach out. We build the group. We talk to the people that want to come on the trips, and we bring great people together, because you're out there, you're spending money to go to a place. You want to have fun. You want to challenge yourself, but you want to have fun also. And you want to get along with people, and we keep the group small, right? So over the years, with Impossible to Possible, we've done close to 20 youth expeditions. Yeah, okay, young people occasionally are not going to get along really well, but having to is something so big as it needs to be managed. No, knock on wood.
Okay. Yeah. And that's exactly where I was thinking with that, is that if you are taking out other people that maybe aren't your best friends that you trust, like there might have been times where, some egos get in the way or something, and
No, it's
people
a
are,
primary, like in choosing teammates for my own expeditions, like it's a primary piece of the puzzle is the ego has to be left out of it.
Mhm.
Because you can't bring ego into these things. That's how mistakes get made. And
Yeah.
then when it comes to client guiding with Capic One, we have phone, I don't want to say interviews, but that's more or less what it is. We're assessing as
Yeah.
we speak to people, which are the right personalities to put together in various groups.
Okay. So you're not trying to build it like a reality TV show where you can get as much conflict as possible. You're trying to do the opposite and have
Exactly. Yeah,
as
exactly.
least amount.
Yeah, exactly. No, we want our lives to be easy, not difficult,
Yeah. Yeah. Um, After all the things that you've accomplished now, are there still moments when you're setting up an expedition where you have some doubts about what's going to happen or how you will do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Every single expedition I plan, because if you go into it thinking you got this, um, you're going to miss something, So instead, I go in with a tremendous amount of respect for the environment that I'm going to be in. Um, I've been going over when I have these ideas and concepts, I go over my route and go over my route, and I've been going over it for maybe a year. So the planning that goes into one of my expeditions, it could be very long term, like years of
Oh yeah.
planning. Yeah, some of the shorter stuff that I'm doing, like shorter projects, it's months, but the bigger projects are years of planning and logistics and saying, oh yeah, you know what? I'm not going to bring that because it didn't work last time, or I'm going to do this time in a different way. And so keeping that open mind to the possibilities that could go wrong,
Right.
planning those contingencies gives you a better chance of success.
Mm. And I was looking at your post recently for your most recent expedition, and I was marveling at your packing one, the one where you pulled out everything and laid out what you were taking on this trip, because it was
Yeah.
so little. That
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
amount that for people that are watching or listening, like you got to go back and see how little you were able to take and survive on. I assume that comes from this years of experience. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So years of experience in knowing what we can get away with. And I've done a lot of desert stuff, really hot desert stuff with Stefano. So we both know each other really well. So the goal was to I've crossed the Atacama Desert. It was one of the most difficult things I ever did, actually. In 2011, I started the furthest point north and I went south 1,200 kilometers, minimal resupply, solo, middle of summer, very difficult navigation. It was a really difficult desert to cross,
And this is
almost
considered
completely
one of
off
the
road.
driest
It's the
deserts in the world
driest place on earth. And I
in
crossed
Chile.
literally in Chile. I crossed literally through ground zero of the driest place on earth. Like I was between the Andes and the coastals. Like I was like in the valley, in the hottest place as well, in the Atacama Desert, like Atacama Desert proper,
Yeah.
So between those foothills and the Andes, so you're down right deep into the Atacama Desert. Now, that was 1,200 kilometers. It took me roughly, I think it was 19 days to do the expedition. And so it was very difficult. But at the end, and again, different times, a lot of the areas that I've gone through, that I went through actually on that 2011 expedition are now mines. There's mining operations out there and all kinds of stuff. Like the landscape has completely changed. So I felt really fortunate to be able to be there in that time and go through some of this desert that was completely pristine because there's no reason for anybody to be out there. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
So, and I saw a lot of really cool stuff out there. But at any rate, this time I said, well, and I've been back to the desert 30 times over the years, different, it's, all over Chile. I have a lot of friends in Chile. And I said, I want to go west to east across the desert, going up towards the Altiplano, but it's a much shorter distance. It was a couple hundred kilometers. but go in summer again, but this time go completely self-contained. So the only thing that we would need would be water resupplies, because there's no, I would have did it unsupported if I knew there was water out there, but there was no water. So, we would have to organize cached water drops from buddies of mine that live there. And we would have that all organized over the course of the, every 15 or 20K, it worked out to something like that. Wherever it was feasible to get water to. So Stefano and I would get our backpacks and leave from the ocean and basically more or less go in a straight line, cross country as much of it as we possibly could, occasionally hitting these mining roads and gravel tracks, and then finishing on a hard pack gravel road up to these mountains to the finish at Santa Rosa in the Altiplano. So in preparing all of our gear and everything, we took experiences from all of our past trips. And I just recently did a self-contained from the furthest point north to the Badwater Basin in Death Valley, completely off-road, similar idea, water, resupply, but carrying everything else. And so I said, you know what, I think there's a great way we can do this. And so we said, how many calories can we get away with not consuming? Like, let's go light with our food and, take a meal or two per day and barely any snacks, go super light, no breakfast. And just, we know it'll take us X amount of time. And so we can run our engines a little bit dry. It'll be lighter. So there was that. And then, whittling away at the gear and taking only what we absolutely needed. And here's the key, knowing what we did need. Like what was critically important. Like nights were going to get cold really quick, although it was 45 degrees Celsius in the middle of the sand dunes when we started. As we ascended, we did 23,000 vertical feet in 200K, going up and down, but going net up. We started at the ocean at 0, and we ended up at 13,000, 14,000 feet at the end of it. Those nights are a lot cooler. So we had to bring with us, we brought -7 down bags with us. Normally we'd take a 0 bag, but the bodies were going to be wasted by the time we get to these higher altitudes. And so experience taught us, well, don't just reach for the super lightest, go slightly warmer, pay the weight penalty there, but we'll cut on other areas that we know we can sacrifice. Like basically wearing what I start with. That's it. Like I'm not, the only other clothes I'm bringing is something warm, and so you get the picture. And that's how we stayed super light. In the video you're talking about, that's not absolutely everything that was in my pack, but it's pretty close. But you see the finished product. If you watch the reel after that one, when we're in the desert, you can see the size of my pack. It's not big for 6 days,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm guessing by now, you probably also have some good sponsors that are supplying you with some of this equipment.
Well, yeah, I work with some really great partners on all of my expeditions, also with Impossible to Possible. Canada Goose, I've been working and collaborating with Canada Goose since, 2008. And they helped me with all of my gear. I had some amazing gear from Canada Goose with me along on the journey. As a matter of fact, if people go back in the videos on my Instagram and your listeners, and they're looking at some of the videos from Kevin and I's expedition across Ellesmere last winter, those windsuits were custom made by the geniuses at Canada Goose for those temperatures and the environment that we were going to be in. So it's really, really cool collaborations. So Canada Goose, and then of course Norda with my running shoes, and I've got the RZ Norda. Again, the shoes are super lightweight, bomb-proof, super grippy. I mean, right? Cthulhu with my gaiters, Osprey backpacks with the pack, Exact Nutrition. I mean, the list goes on. So it's over the years. I'm fortunate, Larry, that I've been at this a really long time. And the people in the industry that support what I do are my friends. And I believe in the products. That's why I'm there. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so the trust that you have in the gear in doing these things is critical because, for example, the west to east across the Atacama. You can't have mistakes out there. I mean, it's full on, dude. It was full on. At some points, I thought, we're at the edge. We're, because it's so hot and the human body can only take so much, you know? And same thing on Ellesmere when Kevin and I, 28 days, 31 wolves walked to our camp over the course of 28 days. There were polar bear tracks everywhere. I mean, you have to fully prepare for absolutely everything that's out there. Yeah. And so you got to trust 100% the gear that you're using.
Are you carrying a gun on any of those expeditions?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Protect yourself
from these? You have layers of contingency, layers when you're on an Arctic expedition. So
we will pick up the polar bear and wolf story and exactly how they guard themselves against these intrusions in just a minute. But first, I want to share a quick clip from the next episode coming out on July the 3rd. In this episode, I am speaking with Ohana member Ted Lomaika, who did the Triple Maui Nui endurance swim this past February in Hawaii. In this clip, he is setting up how the swim started in the middle of a storm.
Because I had, I took 2 full weeks off from my work to go to Hawaii, and that gave me 10 days to swim. And I left it up to the crew to pick the best day. Well, I call this the calm between the storms because of that 10-day window. There was only a 2-day window, really a 24-hour segment where the trade winds calmed down to the point that it looked even swimmable by a human. Okay. And so when the rain happened, I didn't really bat an eye because I realized I trust my crew so much that even the fact that we're now in the midst of a thunderstorm, this is still my best opportunity to finish the swim. And they told us, they were really frank with us. Captain Andy Joka, he said to us, we're watching the lightning. If the lightning comes within 5 miles of where we are right now and strikes the water, the swim is over. There's no questions asked. And I said, you're absolutely right. Safety first. We totally get it. He said, good. Now that you've heard that, as it stands right now, the lightning is actually parting where we are, and it's all around us, but it's really nowhere near us. And so there was one bolt that struck from the lead of the storm, and it struck within 6 miles of where we were swimming.
That's a crazy start to a crazy swim. The Triple Maui Nui is a very technical, non-stop 3-channel swim in Hawaii. You will hear all about how that adventure went, as well as some of the other interesting events he has taken part in. That's all in the next episode of the podcast. Now, let's hear how Ray and his companions protect themselves from polar bear attacks. I'm sure that is something you can all relate to. Yeah.
To paint the picture for you, when you roll into camp on an Arctic expedition, this is just the 2 of us, nobody's setting up camp, it's in our sleds. Yeah. So we right away go to work because it's minus 50, minus 60 with the wind, minus 40 air temperature, very cold. You can't stop. So we roll in and we immediately start unpacking our sleds. While we get the tent screwed into the ice, if we're on open sea ice, we'll talk about open sea ice because on land it's a different setup. Mm-hmm. Open sea ice, the reason it's different is because there's polar bears out there. So the first thing that happens is we get our tent pegged down, and then we get the setup, and then I immediately start shoveling snow around the tent to bury the tent in for the winds that'll kick up at night. Kevin is out setting up the polar bear fence. And what the polar bear fence is this custom fence where we take in 2 ski poles and cut the tops off. The bottoms are intact and attached to a sharpened stake. And then attached to the sides of the ski poles are shotgun blanks, cartridges. Like it's almost like a lever that will fire off the blank. Okay. Right. Yeah. Then there's fishing line between 4 of these that goes all the way around the perimeter of our campsite. So if a polar bear crosses that, it goes off, and it will, at night, we'll wake up, and then we'll be ready with our firearms. Our firearms, we have 2. We have a rifle, 300 Win Mag, and we have a 12-gauge shotgun. The shotgun is in the tent with us. And the rifle is positioned in the vestibule. So if anything should happen, and there was a polar bear comes charging across that fence, rips into the tent, and then the tent is like a messed bag, and then we can't find the shotgun, You get out of the tent, you get into the vestibule, and now you've got the rifle. So, you're thinking of all these things, and there's other pieces that I'm leaving out for time.
Right. Yeah.
But the whole process is thought out, and it has to be exactly the same with the same tasks completed in the same order every night for 28 days.
Yeah. That's amazing. And hopefully you've never actually had the polar bear experience.
No, I've seen polar bears out there.
Seen them,
and
but
the wolves are no polar bear attacks. No,
Yeah.
like I'm knocking on wood heavily here. That's the last thing. A polar bear, when you see them out there in the Arctic, they're beautiful creatures, but they're the size of a minivan. They're huge.
Yeah, they're massive.
You know, yeah. So you don't want to mess with that.
No. Well, if we can just go back to that latest expedition of yours, you didn't quite finish where you wanted it to finish, I believe. Can you tell us a little bit about how the expedition finished off for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. So phase 1 of the expedition was, there was 2 expeditions. Because they were so vastly different the way we were doing them, we said, okay, well, let's make it 2 separate trips. Where if trip number 1 ends, trip number 2 begins. And trip number 2 was hiking from that point supported. So we still had the same backpacks, but we didn't have to worry about our food and carrying all of our gear and all that. Super light backpacks. And we would go another 80 kilometers to Ojo de Salado, the highest volcano on the planet. And with our other buddies from Chile, the 4 of us would climb the volcano together. But when we arrived there and we were, totally stoked to get to high camp, which was at 17,000 feet, so very close to the summit. My teammate Stefano ended up getting altitude sickness. And so we realized, look at it. The desert crossing was so epic. We were so stoked that for us, and we were talking about it the day before heading to the summit, and Stefano was incredibly experienced in the mountains. It just goes to show you, if anybody should have came off that mountain with altitude sickness, it should have been me, because I'm the guy that had blood cancer. But whatever, it's just the way it was, as luck would have it. And we're going up the mountain. He's throwing up every 5 seconds. And we're going up this, this volcano that normally people 4-wheel drive up to 17,000. We're hiking the 21K up. And he's as sick as a dog. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about it. I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Like, honestly, we've had such an incredible trip. We've truly had an amazing adventure. Do we really need, do you really need to kill yourself trying to do this thing? Right. And so, and I was abundantly clear at 17,000. I think we were at 17.1 or 17.2. Like, it wasn't safe. Like, so we went back down. So that's the way it goes. So, did it end the way we wanted it to? No. But was I super bummed about it? No, not at all. Because the adventure I wrote a post about this. This was one of those adventures that had everything. We had success on the first expedition. We were actually ahead of schedule on the first expedition by like 5 or 6 hours. You mentioned the video I posted about the Polish climbers. We ended up helping this group of climbers because we randomly had our camp on the way to this volcano in a place that people would just drive right past with their 4-wheel drives. We were camped there. Nobody ever camps. We're in the middle of nowhere. And if people want to hear the full story, go to my Instagram, because I won't tell the whole story here right now because it'll just take up too much time. But go and check it out.
Please give us the gist of this, though. This is like one of those right place, right time.
Yeah, these people randomly, they were camped. They were going to climb the same volcano. Hundreds of people climb this volcano that we were going up every year. And so they were camped at a different camp, acclimatizing 30K away. There's nothing between us and that camp. There's not 30K behind us. There's nothing around, just mountains. They all look the same. And we're walking the entire way, trekking to this volcano. So, we had to set camp at some points. We set camp in this spot. And, at night, this person comes out of the mountains with a headlamp on, and she comes stumbling into camp, and she's frozen and a little bit of altitude sickness and doesn't know where her 4 teammates are. And luckily, because we're there, randomly camped in this, we weren't doing this expedition. These people could have died. As a matter of fact, one of my buddies, Ismail, who was out there with us, like, is a legendary climber, mountaineer, does search and rescue operations all the time. Mm-hmm. Sadly, has to go and find pick up the bodies, find the bodies of people that get into avalanches and stuff. I mean, he's just, this guy knows the mountains. And he said to us after they went and found everybody and all that jazz. Again, like I said, longer story that you got to see you can hear on my Instagram page. He said they would have died if we weren't there out camped randomly. Like, if these people, they just picked them out and they drove 30K in the morning, I guess, of that day, and just said, well, let's go climb that mountain. And then off they went into the mountain. And then randomly, we show up in the afternoon at some point and set camp not too far from that mountain. And these people, so if it wasn't for that, Ismail said, these people, exposure and altitude, a couple of them were really sick. And he said they wouldn't have made it to the night because there's nowhere to go. Like, they lost their vehicle. They couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
Stories. So that happened too. So the whole thing, it was a full adventure. Let me tell you, was it like Ellesmere Island last winter where, 6 days by snow machine just to get to the start point, and then 28 days on skis crossing the furthest landmass, if not the furthest landmass north, one of the furthest landmasses north in the world, for sure, in North America. That was just a crazy epic expedition last year. But this and it was a success, but this expedition had everything too, right? It had success, failure, this crazy rescue. I mean, everything.
Yeah. So when you're in these situations, like you got to, like, you're so near the top, but things are getting worse. How do you know the difference between this is discomfort, this is normal suffering, and this is, we got to respect this and come back down? Because
I know my teammate, I know Stefano, and he's like one of the toughest guys on the planet. Like, we've done crazy expeditions together. Like, the thing we did in Namibia, crossing that desert, the way we had to push our bodies to get across that desert in the middle of summer, again, almost 2,000 kilometers from South Africa to Angola, or crossing Kamchatka. You just know. When you know. And we've been at this long enough. And when you know, and you're experienced, and we've been doing this for so long that, and like, out of the 40, let's say 45 expeditions I've done, I've had 5 go sideways, right? But when they go sideways and you have to make a hard call, I've always been confident in that call. I've never been and I've never been bummed about the call, because you've given it everything. And I saw him do things physically. You can read a post about that too. I saw him do things physically on that last day that I couldn't believe he was able to push his body to do. And I mean, this is a guy who's a technical climber. He's a technical mountaineer, and he's going up a gentle slope and suffering, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I think that the story of your, being in the right place at the right time, is got to be like one of the best, as far as, because you're so remote and people aren't, crossing paths that often in these things. But what would be another superlative in your adventures where you had a mostly unexpectedly beautiful moment? Maybe like that's a great moment. Like, but what's a beautiful moment?
Well, it's a great question. You referenced my books earlier, and I completely forgot that I even wrote those, because I don't even have a copy of them. They're so old. And I'm working on another book right now, which is almost the exact answer to this question right now, which is, those amazing things that have happened, or those crazy things, or dangerous things, or scary things. There are just so many experiences that I've had under all categories throughout my adventure career. Yeah, they're showing the books on the thing right now. Now, the funny thing is those books don't even touch on most of my expeditions. The book that Steve wrote, and I worked on it with him, was written for a youth audience, and it's in a lot of school libraries and stuff like that. But it just touches, I think, on Atacama expedition and maybe 1 or 2 others. It doesn't really go into it. So that's why I wanted to write something that covers, like, these last 45 expeditions. And there's been a lot of amazing things that have happened over time, and I've experienced a lot of amazing things. on expeditions, seeing incredible wildlife, or having a close call. I broke through ice one time on an Arctic expedition, almost lost my life, but then, got out of this river. I was with Stefano that time too. And I got out of this river and was, completely refocused on the important things in my life. Like it was both one of the scariest things that ever happened to me, and also one of the best things that ever happened to me. So, expeditions, there are just numerous stories that I can't wait to share with people about things that have randomly happened. I'm trying to think of something really, though, right off the top of my head. And of course, I'm getting over this flu and having a hard time trying to think of anything specific, but in this moment. But for example, being in the Sahara Desert, and you're in the middle of sand dunes for weeks and weeks, and looking down and seeing arrowheads in a spot that we happened to randomly saw, arrowheads laying all over the place. And you're like,
Oh, wow.
where are these from? And they're from 10,000 years ago, right? They're like, so randomness on expeditions, that things like that just blow your mind, is one of the things that's always excited me about doing these trips, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned that one book is for a youth audience and is in a lot of libraries. When did you take your adventures to the idea of I want to put those toward youth as well? And when did you feel that personal challenge turn into a responsibility to try and bring this to youth, and the co-founding of your Impossible to Possible?
Well, you know what? So all of my expeditions always have been connected in one way or another. I've had a youth audience following the expeditions that I do. We used to build individual websites for each of my expeditions, and then now nobody really uses websites anymore. They use social media. So, post now on social media, and, there's a lot of teachers that take that content and then we'll show it in schools and stuff. But 2008, my wife and I and my buddy Bob Cox, my best friend in California, decided that we wanted to create something, with the help of friends. We created the organization Impossible to Possible with the goal of bringing young people on expeditions and giving them the opportunity to do the things that I do, but it's their expedition, right? So they're the ones out there doing trekking through a jungle, or hiking through sand dunes, and, or running across a salt flat. And their expedition becomes an opportunity for a learning component to happen. So, youth expedition in Utah, we ran across the Grand Staircase, partnered with the University of Utah, and told the story of the rise of the dinosaurs. And so our youth ambassadors would, run to a camp where paleontologists were digging dinosaur bones. Then they would carry on running the next day, and that would be live streamed into classrooms. And it was just, or even more simple, was it 2 years ago or a year ago, we did Mojave Desert, and our youth team was studying extreme weather. And so we had a senior climatologist from the Weather Network with us, and they were explaining the changes that our youth ambassadors were experiencing as they went high in altitude, crossing this mountain range in Death Valley, and then descending down into the desert floor, and all the different plants that exist at these different altitudes and whatnot. And so creating content around that. And then we did an extension of that in the Atacama Desert as well. So we're always trying to reinvent and how we do the Impossible Possible youth expeditions, but it's always been free. I mean, the common denominators, doesn't matter where you come from. As long as you're between 16 and 21 years of age, you get selected to go. Depends on how big the group is. Each youth expedition is different, between 3 and 5 typically. And everything's 100% free. You get picked, you apply, you get picked, and you go.
Yeah. And I saw each of them basically has a different theme as well.
Yeah, every time it's a different learning component.
Yeah.
The last couple, and in the next one, the educational component in the next one is going to be more robust, but the last couple have been more adventure based. So it's more like, okay, this latest youth expedition, we did a different region in the Atacama Desert, and it was really interesting content. They told and it was done simultaneously with a Capic One expedition. So you had people out there who were on an adult expedition. They paid to go on an expedition, and then simultaneously, separate camp, but similar route. Some of the days were different. Our youth expedition was doing an adventure. And what you had was youth who are 16 years old interviewing adults who are 50 years old, and they're kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And the topic was called Life of Adventure. And it's how do you maintain adventure as you get older? You know, is it something that you can maintain throughout your entire life? And of course, we know the answer is yes, but you know, you share that through videos and storytelling.
Yeah. And like you said, so much of it now is probably just social media.
That was 100% social media this time.
Yeah,
100%. We only posted on, you know, 3-4 posts too. You can't do too many. Now you can't do too many posts because people then just get turned off from it, right? So you got to just enough that hopefully everybody's excited and that's it, you know?
Yeah. Well, like I'm a teacher as well. That my day job, I'm a PE teacher. So I'm dealing with these high school youth all the time. And I kind of have an answer for this next question, but in your opinion, in the work that you do with the youth, what do you feel that young people need to hear most right now?
Need to hear. Well, you know, we live in a different time. I don't know how old you are, Larry, but I'm a lot older than you. And I lived in a time when there was, as I mentioned before, no
You're not
technology.
a lot older than me.
there was no technology, right? And so it was an immersive experience. Living was an immersive experience in a different way. And so regardless of where we come from and our economic backgrounds and everything else, I think just going outside and turning off devices, you know, and becoming reconnected to the world around us, whether it's an urban environment or it's, you know, in the countryside or wherever you are, it's becoming more in tune with your surroundings in a real way. I'm not saying throw your phone in the garbage. What I'm saying is, you know, disconnect from technology now and then. And I think there's more of a movement to this, and this is starting to happen. And reconnect instead with the 3D world around you and what's happening around you. You can have both. Like I've lived on both sides. I'm on my phone all the time, but I also take time to leave the phone behind and just do other things, right? And feel other things and experience other things. So that's one thing. The other thing I try to remind young people is I'm always blown away. And I have teenagers. I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old, or going on 18 and a 15-year-old. And I am blown away at what they're able to accomplish and do at their age, because I was an absolute train wreck. I mean, I was barely crawled out of high school. I mean, you know, did not complete community college. And, you know, seeing what young people do now and achieve now at such a young age, it's almost like this bar moved. And I don't know if it's expectations or what it is, but, you know, I think a huge thing still for young people is, and I try to tell them, before you get like 20 years old and you're running a company, and we're like, you know, I mean, like your life is so fast forward, like you got to take time to travel. Traveling is a huge thing. It takes money to travel. You can do it on a budget. There's ways to do it, but movement, getting around, meeting people, engaging with the world around you, I think is super important.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about your own daughters and how they're, you know, doing these things. I'm sure that you and your wife, was it Kathy?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's yours, what you show them that is helping them to do that. Do they follow in your footsteps at all? Are they runners? Are they adventurers?
They're runners, but they're, you know, they're also very involved in their own sports. My youngest is in biathlon and Nordic skiing, racing, and the youngest also is a sprint canoer, a trail runner, all this stuff. My oldest is very focused on sprint kayak. That's her sport. And so, you know, but we do family trips together where we do adventures together and stuff. We always have since they were young. But, you know, for us, you know, for Kathy and I, it's a priority for us that they're doing the things that they're passionate about, that they love.
Yeah.
And so, you know, for us, our investment in life has not been, maybe like we foregone, what's the word? We didn't buy that thing or we didn't buy this thing. We could use a new stove, definitely, because ours cuts out all the time. Or, our bathrooms, one of them doesn't work. But we take that money and instead invest it in the activities that they're doing that they're passionate about. I want to go to a ski race in Rimouski. Okay, well, that takes money, and so you got to let some things go. And, our house was getting a little beat up, but our kids are rich with experiences instead, right? So it's like, it's just figuring out, every family's different and what your priorities are, but, we want them to be, pursuing the things that they love.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what everybody wants for their children.
Yeah.
Do your children think of what you do as extraordinary, or is it normalized for them because you just do it?
Dude, I may as well work at a box factory. They don't care. I mean, it makes literally, like, sometimes I have to say, like, I was going to the Atacama on this last trip, and my oldest daughter was like, "Where are you going?" Like, they had no idea where I was even going. Like, I'm walking out the door with my bags, So it's an interesting thing. But if you were to visit my house, you'd see that there's no Guinness World Records on the walls or images of my expeditions. Literally nothing on display in this house that reflects what it is that I do for a living. Instead, we celebrate their successes, the things that they're doing, because that's, again, it's just that's our priority in our household. Every household is different. The things that you do, Kevin, my buddy Kevin, that I mentioned that we did this big expedition together on Ellesmere last year, with his kids and his wife. They do these, well, now they're, in college or university and doing their things now. But when they were younger, he'd have those kids in canoe going up the Mackenzie River and I've done epic trips with them, right? And similar philosophy. They're like, gonna let the floors go because we're gonna go and do this thing instead, and it's just, but everybody, you make your choices on what it is you're gonna do. And so in our house, we talk more about what they're doing and my wife is an amazing ultra runner. She was second at the at Moab 240 one year. She plays second. And so she's a great runner, but again, like the buckles aren't on display, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we've made and I celebrate people that do that. It's just in this household, we decided that we wanted to put their things forward first. And it's just for like our family. And there's no right or wrong, it's just, that's what we wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So as far as they're concerned, since they were little, I've been off doing these things, and it's just like, oh, okay, whatever.
That's what Dad does. Yeah. When you return from an expedition, how hard is it to get back into normal family life? And what part of you wishes you were still out on an expedition?
No, 100%. When I open the door, I close the door, I'm back in a normal family life. 100%. No, don't think a moment about being back on anything. It's like, door closes, and now I'm in. Like it's this thing I've been able to psychologically do and focus and create this alter ego that I go on this expedition, and then when I get back, it feels like I've been gone 2 days.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what is in the future for expeditions? Do you have some?
No, I never say where I'm going. I never say where I'm going because I'm superstitious that way. But I'm working on a couple of things, projects that are adventurous, but also there's some really cool side stories. It's more about the story than the adventure. Things that I've been researching. So more about that soon.
Okay. Excellent.
And by the way, for your listeners who have, and for you with your students, what age? It's high school?
High school,
Yeah. So we do have another youth expedition coming up. I think the youth ambassadors have been selected already for this year, but to stay tuned to social media, to my account, you'll see it, and go I2P. The I2P one is dormant unless we're on a youth expedition, or putting out a call to action, and it'll be very brief. And we're like, here's the application. You better apply because you haven't got much time to do it. And so stay tuned. And I always make a post on my page when we're going to do it, or on my Instagram stories, and then it'll disappear. So you got to pay. But we'll be taking applications again, I think, in the summer for the following youth expedition.
Okay. And I'll make sure I put all my links into the show notes for you as well, for all the different things that you're doing. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, let me ask you one last question. When you reach the end of your adventuring, which maybe is upon your death, because you're going to keep going, but when you reach the end of this, what do you hope your legacy is, and what do you hope people are going to say about what your expedition stood for?
You know what? I never think about that, because then you are, for me, then I would be, I'm speaking for myself, then I would be, I don't want to say polluting the waters, but I would be maybe creating something in there that I don't want to create. You know what I mean? I'm just doing it. I'm just doing what I do. That's it. Yeah. And I'm in this moment doing the best I can. And that's it, like it's, there's nothing, there's nothing crazy and great. It's just, this is what I do and I love what I do.
Right.
And so, for me, it's making an impact now. There are so many young adventurers that I talk to almost on a daily basis that will ask for advice. And it could be a training advice. It could be advice on how to do this, that, or the other for an expedition. And when they have success, it makes me so happy. And so the joy I get from that, and this as a PE teacher, when you see your students excel at something or learn a new skill, it's very gratifying. And that's not something you can do when you're dead. So I'd rather be, any legacy type stuff, I'd rather spend those coins now on helping people, mentoring people, getting people, making them stoked,
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think probably with the stories you've told today, we've hopefully inspired some more people to reach out and go for some bigger things. The people of this audience, they do some big things, but they're always looking for something new, a new adventure. I'm sure we've inspired some of them, and maybe they can share this with their kids, and we'll make sure to put all those links into the show notes so that they can start following you and make sure that the youth adventures are available to them as well. So thanks so much for coming and sharing your perspective about all of these fantastic adventures that you do. And I look forward to the next book where you're going to tell some of these stories. And I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to our audience.
Well, thank you so much. And then it was an honor to be on here and to be on the show that Ferg Hawk, the legend, was on. I mean, and for your listeners that don't know him, you got to go look this guy up, because he is absolutely incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, he's back in, I believe, season 2. So you can go look that one up.
Go look it up.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Ray.
All right. We'll catch you soon. Thank you.
Hey, if you liked what you heard today, please tell a friend and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review the show while you're there. Drop the names of the people you think we should interview, and we'll get in touch with them and make that happen. Thank you for listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, a production of 55 Enterprises. Now, really, go subscribe now before you forget.